Mr. President, on a separate topic, the governor was here yesterday, the governor of Florida was here yesterday and again today to discuss Zika funding. I met with him personally yesterday. We met with the majority leader earlier today to reiterate again the importance. Let me reiterate again the statistics. There are now in the mainland of the United States almost 3,000 cases. In combination with U.S. territories, meaning primarily the island of Puerto Rico, there are now close to 16,000 cases. In my home state of Florida alone, we are up to 799 cases. 70 of those cases are locally transmitted, meaning they were not Zika infections acquired abroad. They were either sexually transmitted or by a mosquito in the state of Florida. Infections involving pregnant women in Florida, 86. That's combined both travel and local transmission. It has taken this Congress far too long to act. Now, the good news is, I believe, given conversations that are still ongoing, that we are on the verge of getting something done in the fight against Zika. I would remind everyone that the Senate did act on this issue back in May in a bipartisan way. And I would also take this moment to point out that my colleague, Senator Nelson from Florida, has been great to work with on this and multiple issues, but on this one in particular. And I thank him for his partnership and his hard work in this regard. I enjoy our partnership on many issues involving the state of Florida, including the water bill before the Senate, but on this issue of Zika in particular. But it's time for the rest of us to come together in the interest of our people. I know that right now all the headlines are about the impact this is having on Florida, but I want you to make no mistake, Zika is a national problem, and it requires a federal response, including funding to develop a vaccine that will eradicate this virus. So I do appreciate Governor Scott's efforts at the state level to combat Zika, but it's long past time that this Congress follows suit. This is, by the way, Governor Scott's second visit to Washington to address Zika, and I'm not aware of any other governor who's come up here for the same purpose. But I can assure you that if we fail to seize the chance to pass funding, we are going to see more governors and more Americans from every state and territory beating down the doors here in Washington fairly soon. As I said earlier, there are almost 20,000 Americans now that have been infected, and I think it would be a tragic and terrible mistake to ignore their plight. We have a chance here to help them, to prevent even more people from getting infected. But to do so, we have to act now. And I want to point to one of the aspects of this issue that isn't talked about enough. We already understand the risk of microcephaly, what it means for unborn children. We understand the risk it poses to people in general. But I want to talk a little bit today about the economic impact of it. Because you can imagine that as Zika outbreaks are being reported around the world, and for the first time ever, the CDC is actually designating areas of the continental United States as travel advisory areas that perhaps people should avoid, it begins to have an economic impact. And I also don't need to tell people, maybe I should again, how important tourism to the state of Florida is. And the evidence that this is having an impact on our economy is now far more than just anecdotal. I'm going to quote extensively here from an article in the Miami Herald a few days ago. In August, leisure airfare prices fell 17% year over year at Miami International Airport and at Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport. This is according to an analysis conducted by Herald Associates. Fares for top routes at the nation's other airports rose by 4% over the same period of time. So other airports saw a 4% increase in fares. Leisure airfare fell by 17%. People think, well, that's good news for the consumer. But this is reflective of something, that demand is down, that the number of people wanting to travel there is down. Not to travel in general, because across other airports it was up 4%, but in 2 airports in South Florida it was down 17%. That's evidence that this is having an impact on travel, both business and leisure. Here's some more evidence. Hotel bookings in greater downtown Miami fell by nearly 3% in the first 3 weeks of August compared to last year. Again, as someone who was raised by parents who worked in the tourism sector, primarily in hotels, if these trends continue, not only are these hotels going to get hurt, but the people working there are going to get hurt. There's a reason why this has happened. Let me give you more. Let me go to a couple more business aspects that you would think that go beyond just simple tourism. Just so you know, this is not just about hotels and airports. There is a Bay Harbor Island-based company that does wedding planning. It's called Forever Events. Its owner said that a couple from California spent several months planning a destination wedding in Miami, and then they canceled it. Instead, they're getting married in California. A nanny service that provides babysitting for families staying at hotels and resorts, often because they're in town to celebrate weddings, said the cancellation started coming as soon as the first travel-related cases were discovered in February. And they said that families told them that because their wives were pregnant, they were too nervous to travel to Miami. Business has plummeted 25%, she said, hurting her staff. Phones have gone quiet. We used to get calls every couple of weeks from a mom coming to town, having her baby, and now we haven't gotten any in months. No calls at all. The rationale behind all this, perhaps, is a Kaiser Family Foundation poll conducted in August, which found that 48% of Americans would be uncomfortable traveling to Zika infection areas within the United States, including Miami. So again, this is not just something that's having an impact on our healthcare system, which is dramatic in and of itself, but it's having an economic impact as well, which is why it's so inexcusable we didn't address this in April. We couldn't get final passage on this in May. I know the Senate did its part. It's gotten tangled up in all this election year politics. All I would say to my colleagues is we fight about so many things around here. We have so many issues we could have a debate over. I mean, there's some significant differences between our political parties, and in election years, they become more pronounced. And so let's have debates about those issues. But isn't there, at least when it comes to public health and safety, something that we could say, on this issue, we're not going to play politics. Let's put this issue aside and let's not entangle it in all the political stuff that's going on. Because in the end, this is not discriminate. This is an issue that affects anyone and everyone, potentially. That's what I hope is going to happen here. We've taken far too long. But can you imagine going back at the end of next week or at the end of this month and explaining to people, not just in Florida, but in America, that Congress once again couldn't get anything done on this? So I would just ask both sides to show a tremendous amount of flexibility. I know that there are ongoing conversations now behind the scenes to get some resolution on this. There's so many other issues we could have an argument over. On this one, let's just come together. Let's provide the funding. It's already less than what the president asked for. And I believe we're going to need more in the future. Let us come together once and for all. Let's get this done in the Senate. Then let's work on encouraging our colleagues in the House to do the same so that we have at least some good news to tell the American people at the end of this month. Number one, your government didn't shut down. And number two, that Congress has finally provided funds, not just to help states and localities deal with Zika, not just to help healthcare facilities treat people with Zika, and not just to help people prevent Zika, but to continue the research to develop a vaccine. Because once we have a vaccine, then I think this issue becomes very different. Then we have an answer with permanency to it. So that's where I hope we're headed. That's why I encourage my colleagues here to continue to work on. Let's get this done once and for all. It's the right thing to do for America. It's the right thing to do for our people. And with that, Mr. President, I thank you, and I suggest the absence of a quorum.